I started my coaching and training business myself.
Right. And so where do you specialize? What's your coaching in?
It's just they call it systemic life and business coaching. So in other words, what you said before about how to since we are systems and because as all systems were made of different components, you know, private life and business and health and whatever and wealth, all these things, and they have to somehow be related to each other effectively. So it's not a question of how strong you are, but how balanced you are among these different parts of these components you're made of, and then growing together. But balance is more important than quantity. Okay, because if a person, for example, can make a lot of money, but if he doesn't know anything about money, or if he's too naive, and he gets in very obscure businesses, he's going to lose everything. So the person and the business and whatever area of the life they all have to grow together. Yeah. And so in that way it can work. Otherwise, you're going to have imbalances.
What were you doing before you began the personal growth and the coaching business? Where were you specialized in? What were you doing?
Oh, I was in a totally different field. I was an employee. Mm-hmm. I was working in Carrara. I don't know if you know where that is. That's in northern Tuscany.
Right.
And 90% of the businesses there is stone. You know, they have the marble quarries, and but not only that, in Carrara you have the marble quarries, but we're working with granites, and we were working a lot with the United States with the curtain walls of buildings made of granite. That was so it was a totally different thing, totally different. Right. As I told you, when I got there, I had no idea. When I got there at the seminar, I had no idea where it was going, and boy, did that make a difference.
So where did you go? Where did you do this seminar? Where did you?
It's in Geneva.
Oh, in Geneva. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't international. So it's been a great experience for me, because, as I told you, I then started to collaborate with this organization, and we had people from all over the world with all types of problems and situations. Right. So that was really a great school.
And so is this like, are you making a living out of this, or is it something part of something else?
No. This is how I make my living.
Okay, so you're able to. Are you sort of quite busy? How do you?
Well, it goes. That unfortunately is there is no stability, so you really can't make great plans. But you know, I can work with that. Now I started to work with a coaching platform, a Canadian coaching platform, not too long ago. I just started working with them, and they put together offer and demand. And so they have coaches, and they have people who need coaching, and they put them together.
All right.
And yeah, so I really wanted to start working outside of Italy, because there is in Italy, perhaps you know better than me, there isn't that much of a tradition of coaching. Okay, it's not. For example, I see you know, with this organization that I was talking to you about in Canada, they have all kind of requests. Okay, I haven't seen one from Italy, not one. From all over the world, especially India. It's incredible.
Really?
Yeah, India. Oh wow, it's full. But I don't. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cough. I don't like to work with India, not because I have got something with Indians, but I really have a hard time understanding them.
Yeah, true.
I really have a hard time understanding what they say, and so I don't. I can't. I can't keep on saying. Could you say that again?
Yeah, definitely. So what's this platform called? The Canadian.
It's called Noomi. It's a NOOMI.
Okay, Noomi.
Yeah.
No, because there are so many different platforms offering coaches the possibility of working.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know who is really actually going to do what they say. So you put in money and then you don't know whether you're going to get the clients or not.
The money I put in, not that much. But anyway, they told me that if I don't get back the money, at least the money, I would get a full refund. So
Right. Okay.
I think it's going to work. It's going to work. I already had a recommendation from them. I already talked to somebody who needed coaching. It didn't go too well. Actually, it did go well, but she decided to take some time, and so but she was happy.
So you are a systemic
Life and business coach.
Wow. So how do you? That's quite a title when someone from India or China or whatever asks for a coaching session and you say I'm a systemic life and business coach. What's the reaction?
Well, I haven't had specific reactions actually. Perhaps the word systemic doesn't bother them too much. It's just when they see life and business coaching, they go for that. I assume.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, systemic doesn't bother them too much. They didn't. Nobody ever asked me, why is it systemic? What does that mean? I never got that kind of reaction.
Well, because you see a lot of life and business coaches, but
right.
If you hear a systemic life and I would say, wow, what is that? What is
of course.
Systemic there?
Yeah.
So as we're waiting for people to come, but no one's coming so far, it could be just a conversation between you and me, which is fine.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, because I mean, I had a look over the weekend trying to understand what is systemic, dynamics, and it's quite a complex.
Okay, so it comes from this. It comes from this, the fact that okay, we live and operate in a natural context. Okay, what we call nature, reality, systems, universe, whatever you want to say, it's natural. It's something that's natural, and we are nature. Businesses are nature. I mean, families, individuals, we're all natural, natural things. Unfortunately, we do not relate with these things in a natural way. In other words, this is the difference between mechanistic and systemic approach, because we tend to want to have control and power over things. Okay, when things don't work, we want to aggress the thing that doesn't work and we want to fix it. Okay. Right. That's not the way you go, because whatever manifests in this reality is an effect. Anything that happens is an effect. What we see, what we experience, whatever, of causes and processes that have been going on for perhaps a long time. And so the idea is not to work mechanistically, in other words, trying to fix things, but trying to work on the causes. And that, of course, takes a little more time because nature is slow. It's not okay. For example, if your tap leaks, you need to call a plumber to fix it, and you need to have him fast. Okay, but that's okay because it's something mechanical. But when it comes to people, when it comes to businesses, you cannot work the same way. But perhaps you do have emergencies that you have to fix, for sure, because of events, because of something that happens. But you cannot actually manage or lead, even less so, you cannot lead a company on a mechanistic basis. So you have to go back. You have to learn how nature works. And in fact, I'm working right now on a webinar that I want to put on perhaps 20 days from now, towards the end of the month. And it's called the 7 pillars in Italian. I'm not doing it in English because I don't have English speaking people as subscribers or followers. I have a few, but not too many. And so I'm focusing on Italians right now. And it's going to be called I 7 pilastri della sostenibilità.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
because what
sustainability in business. So you talk about sustainability
in anything, in
yeah.
anything. You see, that's the good thing about, you see, this is one good thing when you operate mechanistically and systemically, is that mechanistically, you have, for example, if you want to fix a leaking tap, you have to be a plumber. If you want to fix your light bulb or whatever, your electric plant, you have to be an electrician. If you want to do whatever, you have to be expert, or you have to be knowledgeable in something that you're fixing.
Right.
With systemic, it doesn't work the same way, because we're talking about, there are only three things that apply: laws, forces, and dynamics. And these laws, forces, and dynamics, that's all there is actually in our reality. What we see is just a manifestation of these three things. And they're all the same. They're all the same. So as a businessman, of course, you offer a service, you offer a product, and you have to be knowledgeable about the product and the service that you offer, obviously.
Yeah.
But the way you manage and you lead the company, though, cannot be mechanistic. It has to be systemic, because the environment is systemic, because it's made of people and it's made of nature. It's nature working there. So these are the two aspects that we have to work with. I'm not saying that it's more important, that systemically is more important than mechanistic, because if you have to fix something, you have to fix something, and you have to know how to do that. But you cannot thrive on just working mechanistically, and that's impossible. Especially, you see, up until 30 years ago, it could have worked. The mechanism, we did not need, nobody talked about systems until 30 years ago. The fact is this, that things happen like globalization, and the logistics, people traveling all over the world, and internet, especially internet, that was a real game changer. And it reunited the world, getting people closer and closer together. So as this happens, you cannot, because people are systems, you cannot treat them mechanistically, because they're too close. In other words, the interconnections, which are natural, of course, the interconnection between people have made our reality more systemic. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, okay?
So we're talking about, Alessandro, just to sort of reframe it, some sort of network, like
a network. Yeah, networks are natural phenomena. Networking is a natural phenomenon. It's obvious that we do that, because as human beings, we look for connection like anything else in nature. Nature looks for connection.
So why did you say that maybe 30 years ago?
Because, for example, 30 years ago, what really changed things was the fall of the Soviet bloc. If now you're young, and so you perhaps may not remember the time of the fall of the Soviet bloc. Perhaps you were just a kid, and but I remember when people were talking about the Soviet bloc, I said, oh, "Who cares? That's the Soviet bloc. Who cares? Who cares about what happens in Australia? Who cares about what happens in China?" It was just like another planet. Okay, because we were not so connected then. But now, after globalization and logistics and the development of logistics and internet, things have changed, because people and countries have grown closer and closer together. And so we have come to realize, like what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, perhaps 30 years ago, we wouldn't have given a damn about what was going to happen, what was happening in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. That was their problem.
So the question, do you think we're more connected now, or we are connected through information, but do you think we're more connected on a humanity basis or not? I mean, when you see something happening in Sudan, or what do you do? What is it? You see, I don't know, a video on YouTube, or you see something come up on your notification. How do you feel about that? I mean, what connection do you have with that, what's happening in Sudan? Or
well, of course you feel bad about it, but you see, the problem is that, like, Africa right now is still out of the radar right now. So it is important. It's still part of this world, but it's a little detached right now. It will become important for us in a while. because that's what happened with Asia. Okay, America, Europe were already together. Now Russia and China, Asia, like China and Russia, are coming together, and we will form a unique bloc. Okay, perhaps in antagonism with each other, but we will be very close, very much interconnected. Right now, like for Australia, for example, we say that Australia is the Western world, but it's out there somewhere. We don't really care what happens in Australia, and not humanly. If something bad happened, of course we will feel bad, of course. Or something happens in Africa, we will feel bad about it. But we're still not at that stage yet where we actually feel that what happens to them is going to reflect on us. We don't give a damn about what happens in Sudan. We can feel sorry, okay, because we're human beings, but it really makes no difference if they're doing well or not. It doesn't affect us right now.
The question, Alessandro, is if something happens in Australia,
yeah,
and the effect is felt in Europe, you living in Europe, what are the factors that make us start worrying about what's happening in Australia? Because until it affects us directly, then it's news and it's the other side of the world.
Yeah.
My question is, when do we start actually worrying, or when do we start actually saying, oh, now this is having an effect on me?
Well, because, for example, I would say this, if you know that, for example, China and Australia relationships are not really great. Okay, they have this type of thing. So if they, for example, should have a conflict, I'm not saying a war, but a conflict, it could be just commercial conflict.
Yeah.
And because China has drawn closer and closer to us, and of course, as I said, even though Australia is on the other side of the world, but it's still Western world, that perhaps something like that could affect us. Something like
that would affect us in the economy. It would affect us
in anything, because if it affects, see, there are no that's what systems are. There are no specificities in there's no such thing as economic or business or family or whatever. It's all one thing. It's when we talk about affecting us economically or other things, that's thinking mechanistically, because we separate things. But in fact, although economy is a very specific thing, of course, but it's still part of the system. So whatever happens in the economy reflects on families, for example.
Yeah.
So there is no real distinction.
And so when we look at what's happening in Afghanistan with the Taliban,
Yeah.
so on, that's okay. That effect there is more. It's not having an effect on the economy because
no, but for example, it has in migration.
Or I ask myself, we in Europe are looking at that from a religious point of view as well, hearing about the religious conflict over there, but it doesn't really affect us directly.
No, not that much. Not until they come over here and trying to convert us to Islam.
And so when we talk about systems, we're not connected to them.
Well, like I said, in order for their systems to really connect, there has to be some kind of relationship. If there is no relationship, there is no community of systems.
Give me an example of relationship.
Well, in how you connect, how you exchange information, how you exchange point of views and opinions and different ways of doing things, of thinking. Okay, all these things are part of how we connect to people. But for now, I don't know any Taliban. I don't know about you. I don't know any Taliban, so I really don't care. Okay, because there is no connection yet. It will arrive. It will arrive.
So when there is a connection and there's a direct effect on you, that's when the systems.
Yes, then you feel that we are part of the system. And look, it's inevitable. All of humanity is heading that way. We cannot avoid that. We cannot avoid that unless we have a nuclear war, erasing part of the, then we're going to go back to the caves, but that's another thing. But the way humanity is progressing right now, it's inevitable that we get more solidly and concretely connecting together. It's inevitable.
And so for people like us, I don't know, Taliban or Eskimos or people that we don't have any connection with them. So we connect with our direct environment.
Exactly, the people that we connect directly with. Yes.
Yes.
But even if an Eskimo, as you said, comes here to this webinar and connects to this webinar, at that point he's no longer an Eskimo. Well, he's an Eskimo, but I mean he's no longer somebody coming from who knows what, because I'm having some kind of connection with this person. So things start to change at that point.
Okay, and so when you belong to, just got me thinking, I'm just asking some free questions, Alessandro. Okay, so
sure, go ahead.
So as we are connected on LinkedIn, for example, that
Yes.
social media page, LinkedIn, and there you might have Eskimos, you might have Talibans, you might have Italians, English, Germans, everyone together. How does that work as a system, though we don't know each other? I mean, I don't know an Eskimo directly, but
No,
in the social network. How does that work?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is a professional network, of course, and so that's still, it operates in the realm of egoism. Okay, so egoism is the natural enemy of connection and systems, because egoism tends to wanting to separate from people, not to unite. Okay, so that's his job. That's the way it operates. When I coach, I talk a lot about ego, because it's a very powerful force that we have to understand, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about our ego. It's something, we think it's something negative, and in fact it's negative only when we can't control it. Then it becomes something negative. Otherwise, it can be our greatest friend and ally, but we have to know how to relate with him. And so people have to understand what an ego is. But in LinkedIn, you can say what you want, but we look to have a personal benefit from connecting to LinkedIn. We don't really care if that person that is even connected to me has success or not. Perhaps I may even adverse the fact that he has success. I may be jealous of his success. So even though we are connected, first of all, we really don't know each other, okay? Because unless we do something like this, like in this webinar, and I can see your face, I can talk to you, we can exchange ideas and point of views. And so we start connecting right now. And even now with Maytree, how's that? Okay. And even now that she showed up, we're going to have some kind of connection with her. And she's no longer somebody I don't know. Okay. So, and systems work in a very, it's not something that you can change. What happens in nature, the laws of nature and the forces and dynamics are always the same. So they don't change. So when you understand them once and for all, you can be sure that they won't change. They will not betray you. They're not going to say, I'm not the same that I was last week. Of course, it's going to be like this until the end of times. So that's something that we can really, really rely on. When you understand these things, and for example, ego is a very strong force. It's a force, okay? Because anything that causes something to move is a force. Okay, so in this case, it's egoistic. So the ego pushes me. It's a force that induces me to work just for myself, and tendentially. Okay, and
so we're talking about system dynamics. We're talking about system dynamics as a mathematical way of looking at life. Is that what we're looking at without the emotion?
Well, I wouldn't say mathematical, but it's pretty much reliable as mathematics can be. For example, I've worked out an assessment test which is systemic. I had to make it myself because I couldn't find it on the market. So I did it myself, which is made up of 3 components. And with that, I can assess practically anything. The person, a company, the manager, a salesman. I can assess even my pen. Doesn't matter, because anything that exists has 3 components to it. Anything. So the first component is a structure. Let's say this pen, for example. This pen is a structure. It has a certain weight, a certain color, a certain length. Okay, it works in a certain way. It has a certain design. This is its structure. And the structure is what enables whatever we are assessing to operate in this material world. Without structure, we would not be able to exist in our world. Okay, so this is, and 90% of the people focus 90% of the time on the structure. That's what we do. Because it's more immediate. It's something that we can handle more easily. But then there's also a second aspect, which is a relationship, which is the emotional thing that I have with this pen, because I can say, okay, this pen writes black and it has a certain design, but do I like it? Does it attract me? Does the color attract me? How do I feel it comfortable? How long is it gonna write for? And so I don't have to go buy another one. All these things are relationship. In other words, if I put these 2 pens together, which are quite similar in a certain way, okay, but I say, perhaps I prefer this because this has wood, this is some kind of cardboard, okay, it's cheaper. I like this one more, and yet there's still 2 pens. So this is the relationship. And the third thing is the meaning. Okay, so you go and analyze, because finally, if you take this pen, it has a structure, it has a relationship, and I would say, how much did this cost? If they tell me €5, I would say keep it. If they tell me 50 cents, I'll buy it. It's just a question of money, that's all, because I'm not so fond of it. It's just, I just need it for writing. But ultimately, what is the pen for? Okay, and so why has it been designed this way? Had it been designed to be cheap, to be a luxury article, a luxury item, or what was it made for? For a seminar? How long does it have to last? A month, a year, whatever. Okay, so that's the meaning, which is the highest part of the thing itself. Because if it did not have a meaning, this pen would not exist. I mean, it's not like for the structure that it wouldn't exist in this world, in this material world or dimension, but it would not exist in our mind either. It would just not be there. Okay, not in any which way whatsoever.
So what you're saying is, if I understood, Maitri, join in if you want, okay? I'm just trying to understand system dynamics, because Alessandro is the expert, and I'm coming across this topic for the first time, so I'm trying to understand it. So what we're saying is, you've got the structure, which is the pen. You talk about the relationship that you have with the pen, and the meaning, as you said before, is the meaning, but it's the meaning that you give to that structure, to that object.
Yes, not you as the observer, though. It's not you as the observer, but
I mean, you as the user. I mean, if I'm going to use that pen, it's the meaning I give to that pen, right?
Well, it's not you who give the meaning, but the person who made it.
No.
Whereas the relationship is between me, the possible user of that pen, okay, then the relationship is about me, it's about the observer. But when it comes to the meaning, it's not me who gives that a meaning, but those who've made this pen. Why have they made this specific pen this way? Now, I may like it or not. As an observer, I can say, I like it, but I do not decide the meaning. I don't know if that's clear.
Maitri, is that clear?
Let's make an example with a business, okay? So what is a structure in a business? A structure in a business is how much income, the competence, the skills of the people working there, the successes, that it achieved in the years. A structure is usually related to the past. And so everything that anything exists, a pen or a company or a business, what we see as a structure is anything that happened to that thing from since it started to this very moment, or even a second before this very moment. Okay, so that's the history, and what we see is the effect of all that history. So that's the structure. That's what enables the company or that business to operate in this material reality. Then we have a relationship. Okay, so let's say I make pens. And I decide to that I want to give a certain specific design to that to this pen. But actually, it is better if we start the other way around. We should not start, in fact, with the structure. We should start from the meaning. In other words, before I even think about the pen, I want to know what meaning I want to give to this pen. That's the most important thing, because when you have that, then, for example, I want it to be a cheap article, or I want it to be a luxury thing, or I want it to be for professional designers, for example, architects. I have to decide that. That's me. That's the company.
So when you say the meaning, Alessandro, you mean the purpose of its existence.
The purpose. Yes, exactly.
Of its existence. Why?
Exactly. We have to have clear that in mind, you know, like, for example, this webinar, this has a meaning, a structure, and a relationship, even this webinar. Okay, so you have to give, for example, you started this webinar or the series of webinars having something in mind, something that you want to offer, something that's not there or not exactly like you had in mind. That's the meaning that you gave to this webinar. Now, people coming from outside, like Maitri or Michael Brown right now, who just connected, can say, oh, I love the way Gary does this webinar, the series of webinars. They say, I'm not very much interested in what he does. I've seen better things. There's nothing you can do about that, because that's up to the observer, okay, to his taste. You cannot change that. But you gave it a specific meaning. So you designed these webinars in a very specific way. And then you have to give it a structure. So you have to have a PC to have it, a good PC, and you have to have the right environment, and you have to have all the tools that you had in order to promote this webinar. That's the structure, okay? But you have to start from the meaning. Okay. Now, when I do these assessments, I calculate these three aspects, and then I blend them together, because it is systemic. Otherwise, it would still be mechanistic. Because even if I do these things, meaning, relationship, and structure, it would still be mechanistic, because each one of the three is separate. But once I have made the assessment on these three aspects, I have to know how these various aspects interact together. Then I can know what the situation of that pen is, if it's going to do well or not. What are his weak, as you were talking to me about SWOT. Okay, what's his strengths? What's his weaknesses? What's the opportunity? What's the threats? And I can calculate that, but I can also say this doesn't work too well because it's too weak in relationship. For example, the design stinks. It doesn't make, I don't like it. It's too poor, or it's not for the target that I have in mind. So I have to change something there. Is
this the producer, let's say, of the pen talking, or is it the person, the observer who's actually?
It can be both. For example, like we go back to the meaning. Okay, why did I create this pen? Who is it for specifically? For students, for professionals, or specific professionals? These are just use and throw pens, or whatever. I have to decide that as a producer. But then when the producer came up with a specific meaning, it has to give it a relationship. In other words, what I want people to be attracted by about my pen. I have to decide that. Now, it doesn't mean that, for example, this is for architects. It's just for architects because it's got a very, sensible tip. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm talking about here because it's just making an example. But okay, I have to know. And I made it for these professionals, for these architects. Now, it does not mean that every architect, because I made it for them, that every architect is going to appreciate it. Because they may appreciate the meaning, they may appreciate the fact that it has a strong meaning because I made it specific for them, and it has a very, very good structure because it's made of certain good materials. It's expensive, but as far as relationship is concerned, I may not like it, even if I'm an architect. See, this is how things have to relate to each other in a certain way. So you have to know that nobody, even if you make specific things for somebody, doesn't mean that everybody that belongs to that category is going to appreciate it. It doesn't mean.
So when we start a business or a coaching business or whatever, what we put out is subjective to what people
you have no choice. You have no choice because the worst thing you can do is to be generic.
And so
that's the worst thing.
What is the way for us now using the system dynamics for our coaching business or for a business? What's the line to take?
Well, the first thing I would do, for example, when I coach, the very first thing that I do, and I have them make this assessment, this test. From this test, I know exactly what the situation is. And when I know what the situation is, I can work on that. Okay. I cannot know beforehand. And it's not very easy to trick on that assessment because there are countermeasures that are used that even if say, for example, how good of a structure is this? Oh, like a cardboard here. Oh, I give it a structure like 10. You can't fool me. This will never be a 10 as a structure because it's made of cardboard. But if, for example, your intention, the meaning, is to be very popular, is to be very cheap, perhaps even if it is cardboard, it would have a very high rating because it's cheap and it fits the meaning. I go back to that. The meaning, what you want to create, what you want to produce, and having that clear in mind is the most important thing. Relationship and even structure, they come after. The first thing is to have very clear in mind what you're on the market for. What are you contributing to the market? That is what you have to be clear about. So
I think we've all come across Simon Sinek in his videos on why, your why.
Yeah, right.
So just to understand here, Alessandro, okay, my why, but then what's my purpose? Where are we connecting here to this? Because he says start with your why. You're saying start with the meaning.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Same thing. Yeah, it's a purpose. It's the meaning. It's what are you there for? What is your company there for? How does your company want to affect the market that you're in, that you're operating in? That's the meaning. That's the purpose. That's the why. It's right in the meaning.
But isn't that different? It's a question here. My why I opened a business, and what purpose will my business have in the market? Aren't they different? Just a question.
No, because you decide which niche of the market you want to get in. You decide that. It's not the market that decides that. The market may not like it, but you decide where it goes and what you're there for and what your product is there for.
We were speaking before as well about nature, system dynamics in nature. Can you give us an example of that, how that works?
Yeah, because when we talk about nature, we usually think about plants, trees, and animals. Okay, nature is everything. We are immersed in nature right this very moment. Okay, nature is we can also call it a matrix if you want. Okay, we can call it that, but it's this reality. This reality is nature. In other words, what does that mean? That this reality works on the laws, the forces, and the dynamics, which all of nature is made of, without exception. So we have, so if we want to talk, when we talk about sustainability, what does that mean? What does it mean to be sustainable? It means that if what you do, your behavior, your attitude is not in compliance with the laws of nature, it will not be sustainable. It can give you some results on the short term, not on the long term. It's going to bounce back at you. Because you cannot fight nature. You cannot fight the laws and the forces and dynamics that exist. And even each one of us is a force, because we're part of nature. We do something. Right now, I'm exerting a force on you. In other words, I'm talking about what I'm doing, and I have you think somehow. So I've caused something to happen, which could be pleasant or unpleasant. That's not up to me, but I am creating something in you, in all the people that are listening to me right now. So, but the thing is that there are things that are universally, that apply universally, and other things that are just pertaining to, for example, values. What I say may be attractive to you or not because it aligns with nature or not. That's not the primal point, but the fact that what I say is aligned with your values, with your value system or not. In other words, what's important for you. So first comes that's the emotional part. But when you have attitudes and you behave and you interact with nature, which means even interacting with people, because people are nature, I have to apply certain laws. I have to be aware that, for example, there has to be balance. There has to be dynamism. There has to be growth. Growth is another law of nature. Everything that exists grows. So if it doesn't grow, it dies. I mean, there's no other. It's not like mechanical things that they don't grow, okay, and they don't die either. They rust, but they don't really. They just change state a little, but they don't actually die.
So when you're saying the laws of nature, that sometimes we go against the laws of nature, and so it's not sustainable, but it is
it's going to bounce back.
Productive. Let me say you can have some benefits, but on a short term, because it's not sustainable. So when we talk about the laws of nature, are you talking about also the company values, the personal values? Is this the same thing?
No, it's not actually the same thing. It's a little different. Value systems are, what can I say? Things that you give importance to. Okay, things that become important for you, and most of these things are things that we have inherited. Okay, most of them, not all of them, because we can value things upon experience or upon the things that significant people have transmitted to us somehow, and they have become important for me. So, but that's not really nature. That's us. That's in fact, value systems are totally managed by our ego. It's their ultimate. It's the ultimate thing that, how could I say, the ultimate defense that ego puts in front of us. In fact, all conflicts and wars are just a conflict of values. Values create separation. They don't unite people. They unite people who have the same values, or they can separate them and get them to kill each other. So, because our ego likes things that are similar to us, and it somehow wants to relate to things that are similar to us because it doesn't find separation. So it's okay. You can be a good friend of mine, a good ally of mine, but it's all of his doing. So we have to be very careful of that, because it's a very, very powerful thing. Our value system decides what we do in life. So we have to know how to handle that with great delicacy.
So looking at the laws of nature, specifically in business, can you give an example of the laws of nature? Because as you said, nature is everything. It's not just the forest, and animals
Sure.
and mountains, but it's not where we are. Even this is nature, as you
Yeah,
said.
sure.
So when we talk about the laws of nature and sustainability, give me an example of how in my business, I run a business, I've been running it for 20 years. How can I bring that into my
Okay.
reality?
That's a very, very substantial question. But
Give me a
one thing,
answer.
yeah,
Short
one thing is what I said before, and that's the fact that you have to be able to recognize what is a mechanistic approach from a systemic approach. In other words, when you're trying to fix things, that's a mechanistic approach. Okay, something happens and you try to fix things. For example, your production manager made a mistake, and whatever came out of the production line was all wrong. Okay, the measurements were wrong. I don't know, whatever happened. And so what you do, you're trying to get, and that's our ego again, we want to get control back. Okay, we want to fix that situation immediately. We want it now. So we get mad at the person. Perhaps we may even decide to fire the person. See, that's a mechanistic approach. Instead of thinking, what happened? Why was this production manager induced to make that mistake? Distraction? Was he overworked? What happened? I will try to understand what happened there, which is the cause of what happened. Because you cannot fix what happened anyway. It's happened. It's part of the past. You cannot fix that. But you can fix the reason why it happened. So that's an example of a natural approach. Another thing is to always, like I said, nature has its times. So when you try to accelerate these times because you want to have, for example, a short-term income or profit,
yeah.
that's quite, it happens quite often. That is something that you may be successful at that too. But if your environment, if your context was not ready to have that kind of return that you had, you are going to pay that in the medium long term, and it's not going to be sustainable, because sustainable means that it is sustainable when it is in the long term.
So we were talking before, Alessandro, about being connected, being over distances. And then we're talking about sustainability, then we're talking about individual responsibility of being sustainable, thinking of other people, or not just yourself.
True, exactly.
My business, I can say, well, I don't really care because I'm making a profit and my business is going very well, and I'll just do it my way.
Right.
And I don't look at my neighbor who regarding sustainability. So how do we get that into all? You were saying about connecting with the Taliban, Eskimos, and so on. What I do here in Italy doesn't have a direct effect in someone who's in India.
Oh, you bet it will, because with the communication that we have today, whatever you do to somebody in India is going to get back at you very, very soon, much sooner than you think. Perhaps, like I said, 30 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. But today, the response that you get from systems is extremely fast, very fast. So there's not really something that you can do to say, who cares? It's somebody in India or Africa or whatever, who cares? I would be careful about that, because it's going to get back at you. I would be very careful. We cannot make that kind of reasoning today. Like I said, you could have done it 30 years ago, not today. It wouldn't work. You see, the fact is that this matrix that I'm talking about has an understructure. Now, okay, I don't want to get cheesy here, but it's made on, I'm going to use a very strong word, is based on love. So, which means, what does love mean? Which I have a sincere interest in giving the best to my fellow man. You cannot go wrong with that. If your actions are follow this kind of thinking, you cannot go wrong, because this matrix is based on love. All the religious leaders of the past have been talking about this all along. whether it be Jesus, be Moses, be Buddha, be whatever, they've all talked about the same thing. There must be a reason. And the reason is this. It's based on love. It's based on and the more we are concerned about the well-being of other people, we will produce better because we're interested in giving the best thing possible to them. And that's going to do good to our business. All the other ones, all those who don't care, they will fail. No question about that. They may fail today, in a year, 10 years, or 20 years, but they will eventually fail. And all this process will get faster and faster and faster. So what today takes, what long-term today is, when we were talking about long-term in back in the 1980s or 90s, that was 30 years. Today, long-term is 6 months. And it will get shorter and shorter and shorter. So whatever you put into the system will get back at you in a good way or in a bad way, much more quickly.
Yeah. I mean,
and people are understanding that. People are becoming, at least from the point of view of communication, people have understood that. Many entrepreneurs have understood that. They may not be consequent to what they communicate. In other words, I want to communicate to you that I'm there for you. Okay. I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking about what can I give Gary. Okay. But, and I write that on my website, and I write that on LinkedIn, and I write that everywhere. But if I'm not consequent, it's not going to work. But the fact is this, and that people are starting to strongly understand that they cannot avoid this. They understand that if people are going to buy from you, it's because they feel and they know that you are on their side. You're not just there for your profit. And they will be happy to make you richer because you were thinking about them. This is the trend right now, Gary. Now, if I said these things 30 years ago, they would have laughed at me. 30 years ago. Today, they're not laughing so much.
No. Maitri, say something. Say something. Hello.
No,
Michael too. Hello, Michael. Just saying hello now. We're coming to the end. Maitri, say something to us. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah. Thank you. It was so profound. And I think I can connect with Sir because I think we always look for the 20 years or 30 years kind of, being entrepreneur, because this is the sequential problem that people are looking for short-term profit, like, 2 months, 3 months, and, let the get resource. And then, afterwards, we will think of it. But by the time, we will be in a saturation period that there will be zero heart, like people will not come back to you. But if I consistently able to maintain that relationship with many people at the same time, according to my experience, it's happening. Because on birthday, in Facebook, I'm having 4,000 plus connections.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anyone. I mean,
exactly.
Hardly 600 people we are, communicating every day because of that wildlife photography. But on my birthday, every year I'm flooded by whole world. Like, I will take 3 or 4 days to, say them, thank you. And I'm not going to miss that. Not a single person that, I couldn't say thank you. I couldn't be able to say, because I'm taking it so seriously, because they don't know me, but they feel that this is our day that we should, wish. So age doesn't matter, 70, 80, 90, year 18, 30, 40. So every year it's happening that maybe I'm doing nothing for them, but I'm always available for them, that whatever the queries, whatever the questions, whatever the problems they are going through, and just jump on it.
Yeah, sure.
And many times I realize that, should I do this or not? But every time I'm getting my answer from here that, yes, why not? Because we are all a family. So why not? And every time I'm focusing on monetary purpose, it's not done, because we are in this service that, we can't say that every time, first time, need to pay, and then probably I will think, people are in crisis, people are in pain. How can I talk about monetary issues? That is not that thing that I have learned from my parents, or, I can't say that,
Yeah.
So every year it's like, so every day I'm getting like 16, 20, 25 people, they're having birthday. I'm taking my time to wish each and every day, everybody with, I need to work on the greetings card. I need to work on the cake, what kind of cake I need to send, what kind of they will feel comfortable, like, okay, wow, something wow factor, that special day. And if I'm going to miss their birthday, next day, probably I'm going to say, extremely sorry, I missed your special day. So that touch is matters a lot. And accordingly, according to my opinion, like globally, many people, they came to connect with me like zero interest, actually, from my end, from their end. It's just an unconditional relationship.
Brilliant.
So saying hi, good morning, to saying good night, whether it is 5 a.m., 5 p.m., 4 p.m., 4 a.m., doesn't matter. Whenever I am online, sending coffee, that gift. And many people are there who doesn't have that, maybe new phone. They don't know how to send gift. They don't know how to, senior people mostly I'm talking about. So I am sending, you won't believe. I am choosing the picture and sending to them, and next day the same picture I'm going to receive with good morning. That kind of relationship. They will be waiting for that new cup of coffee image. So I need to, get a collection of many copies so that it should not repeat. So whether I'm claiming that I'm busy all the day, doing many things, multiple things, but the touch is very important for me. So I'm truly agree with sir that, if we are thinking about sustainability, so it is coming from the longer period of time zone, not that, 2, 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. No. So it is almost more than 10 years I'm in Facebook. The constant relationship is there. It's more growing.
Yeah.
But
Well done, Matri. Well done. Well done. Keep up the good work.
Sure.
Michael, before we close up, have you got, did you take any of this on board? The system dynamics, mechanistic systems, did you take any of this in?
Gary, thank you for connecting the various people globally. And Alessandro, you're absolutely a wonderful soul. I really do appreciate the aspect of the value system and managing it to avoid conflict. And in essence, Gary, that's what you've done by making people feel autonomy, feel part of a community with love, and they buy into a concept. So Alessandro, the way that you've expressed it and put it across to so many people that are in dire need of little processing and understanding, I feel personally that you've articulated it in a way that many can process it in a way that will benefit them globally. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you.
Thank
I'd
you.
love to actually connect. I'd like to connect to you one-on-one one day.
Sure, it will be a pleasure.
Well, Alessandro, thank you very much for your time today and your insights and your knowledge. You took on a difficult, complex topic for us, not for you, for us. I speak of myself, let's say. I don't know about Matri, but it was. And as I said, I looked over this topic over the weekend and I thought, oh my, how are we going to do this? It's like, it's quite sort of challenging. But anyway, you did a very good job making it very simple for me, for me to understand. So I've got a much better idea of what system dynamics is. And so I thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having had me here, Gary. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what this is all about. This BEwell is just to get some knowledge into areas that. So when we sit down at the table, we talk about coaching, or we talk about the laws of nature, we talk about ourselves. We've got some more ideas to bring to the conversation. I hope, Matri, I hope you're taking something away, and Michael too. These BEwell webinars are every Tuesday, so they're free, and it's my way of connecting, my way of actually contributing, giving back to my business and to life, what life has given me. So when you see these events, try and repost them, or try and sort of put a like or something that would be really helpful. And that way we can actually connect the world with Eskimos and
Yeah.
and Talibans. Why not? It would be really good to have them all on board.
Okay.
Okay,
Very well,
so
Gary. It was a pleasure. Real pleasure.
I've recorded this session.
Yep.
I've recorded the session. What I'll do is we'll be editing the session and then I'll put it on my YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and use it or watch it again, you can. Okay.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Again.
It was a real pleasure. Have a nice day. Goodbye, Maitri.
Bye, bye, sir. Bye. So, bye.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye, Michael. Bye-bye.
Bye, Michael.
Bye,
Bye, Michael. Bye.